thanks for tuning in. My name is Jeremy. I am the co-founder of Feather, and I'm here with Marcy. And Marcy, we've got a great story and a great conversation ahead. But I wanted to start off with maybe sharing a little bit about, the fact that our paths really first crossed because of our mutual friend and one of my mentors, John Kaplan. So thanks, Cap. Really appreciate it. But funny enough, Marcy, I actually felt like I knew you 2 years before I knew John. Because I had listened to your episode on revenue builders, the first one, and you had been talking about balancing leadership and burnout and motherhood, and it really hit home in that moment because I was going through a lot of changes. My wife and I were having our first child, and I sent it over to Christina and actually to a bunch of other really amazing people because it wasn't just about work. It was really like showing up fully for people who matter. And you've been really special to me. And so having you here and building a friendship after all that time is, and the inspiration has been great. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I am so glad to be here. And Jeremy, I will say, I feel like I've known you a lifetime. There's just some people you connect and we've never met in person. But I feel like once you get that connection with somebody and the first conversation goes well, we've probably talked a dozen times since our first introduction. So I'm happy to be here and happy to enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. And today we're going to focus pretty much on, how do we actually stay human while the world is speeding up, and, why relationships in general really are the real advantage in today's day and age where there's lots of noise, there's lots of chaos. And at the end of the day, people just want to work with people that they like and that they trust. So maybe we could kick off with, a little bit of background here, right? So Marcy, you've been building communities throughout your career. You've had a really amazing run building your own agency and working in some amazing companies. But I'd love to just maybe get your thoughts on when you think about what's driven your success, how much of it do you feel like it's come down to relationships that you've built along the way?
Well, I will say you absolutely are right that relationships is always the main factor as it relates to like anything in life. Like when it comes to like the meaning of what you do in the day, it doesn't matter whether you're busy at work or you're busy at home, like how you have relationship with the people in the room make you feel like you had a great day that was worthy of everyone's time or not so great of a day. And I was lucky that when I first started my career, I was in a high-paced, fast-growing organization, and their mission statement was strive for excellence through serving others. And I wasn't a girl that wanted to go into sales. I think like in the 90s, there was no sales leadership, major you had in college. So I wanted to do something else, but I found this amazing company. I wasn't actually sure what they were doing, but I knew the people were awesome. They were fun. And I knew with sales, you could make some money. So for us, the mission and the vision that they always had is strive for excellence through serving others. And this company has exponentially grown. They're still one of the best staffing companies, technology services companies out there. But what's so interesting is as a 22-year-old, the only way you got promoted was through a vote. So you have your peers and they would vote who's ready for the sales promotion. And those that got the vote were the ones who would get the promotion. And all that said is the more you served other people, because the vote was like, I'm a better person, I'm a better leader, I'm a better this because of Marcy. And if you get that vote, you got promoted. So at 22, that was like, got it. Like, I know exactly what I need to do. But you start scaling that. And so my team went from like a team of 5 to a team of 20 to then, by the age 30, I'm managing 300 people. We just kept that motto alive. So then it was the relationships within the organization that worked when you weren't in the room that got people doing the right thing. So for me, like that story to me is all about people and how you leave a legacy with people and people that want to help other people be successful. Yeah. It's contagious. And that just is, that's kind of the X factor that we always saw as our secret sauce.
Yeah, it really is a common theme of things that I've been hearing as we're building, the intersection of technology and building relationships is just looking to help other people and being proactive and trying to find ways to add value to other people. But, at the age of 30, 10 years or so into, out of college and working, you've got a huge organization at that point. Like, how are you navigating 300 people and 300 relationships, and still, as it gets to a certain point of scale, like, what were some of the things that you were doing during that time?
I want to be clear. I think I happened to do well in promotions, but I was completely underqualified. The company was growing so fast. I just kept getting the votes and it worked. So I look back at who I was at 30. The interesting thing for me is at that point in time, I was, the youngest vice president. And then I also was the only female vice president. So I was a C, like my 19 direct reports, they were all guys. And then all my peers were guys. And so for me, I was kind of lucky in the sense that I was the only female in a world. I mean, this is probably like 2002-ish, but in a world where like I was with my good friends, like we all wanted to win together. It really had nothing to do with gender. And I didn't think there was much difference between men and women in the workplace until I became a mom about a year later. Mm-hmm. And that's when I recognized that there's a level of like, how you kind of be your authentic self as a working mom was different than me being my authentic self just as a executive. And so I was lucky, like the things I was doing different was I knew I was on borrowed time because I had no intention of being a working mom. So from the day I came back from my first maternity leave, we knew that I would only work until it didn't feel right for our family, didn't feel right for me. So I still pushed myself as much as possible, but I always knew that I had time because the second I didn't have enough time for my daughter, Katie, the second time I didn't have time for my husband, Chris, I was like out. And so when I would have some stress, I could come home and I would talk about it, but not in a way that I was like trapped, like in a victim loop, like I'm the only one, this is so hard for me. I'm the only female, but my husband would be able to say, hey, is now the time that you want to stay home? And I'd think about it and I'd be able to pause and take that breath and be like, no, I don't really need to be working. I want to be working. I choose this team. I choose this stress. So I think what I was doing differently, I was always allowed to be me. And then I also felt really fortunate because sometimes my peers or the guys that work for me, they felt like this guilt that they had to golf on the Sunday when they wanted to be home. They had to do the poker nights and they had to do all these things, all these extra things. But because I was a mom, they all got it that I had to leave at 4:30 to miss traffic. So I really had to find a way of staying authentic with myself while figuring out how to make connections with 300 people. So to do that, I think my kind of the gift and the advice I always give to my clients is the more you can figure out who you want to be in a way that you're proud and be that person more often, it's not stressful to interact with other people because they also expect you to be that person. And then through that, you get a genuine, authentic relationship because I'm not in the grind, pushing so hard and using somebody else's story. And then we connect and clash. I'm actually being me. And I'm like, hey, how are you? Are you feeling motivated? Are you feeling like you're not hitting your numbers? What's up? Like, are you okay? So I could kind of keep that genuine, relationship. And so, it's hard for me to look back to that 30-year-old 20 years ago to see how she did it. But I do think I was blessed in the sense of perspective that I was choosing to go to work every day. And I was choosing to win with this team that I really loved. And many of them, I knew their families. We were a pretty close-knit group. And so I wanted them to be successful for their why as well.
Yeah, that it's pretty awesome opportunity to be in where you can go and curate, cultivate a home life and also be really energized by earning and winning and smashing the number and having fun doing that. It's really what an awesome scenario. But one thing is just standing out to me that you just said, which was you had 19 direct reports. I almost had a bit of like a heart attack right there for a second. Like, how do you actually manage 19 direct reports, both from the efficient perspective, but also deep and connected? Like for somebody who has got a span of control of that wide, like what are a couple of things that you think that, helped you?
But for some reason, I'm on the working mom theme. So Jeremy, tell me to get off that when I need to. But, one thing I realized is when I got pregnant with Katie, I am like managing this team. Like it was and anyone wanted my job. I'm not saying like I had that job and I was going to have it forever. Of the 19, there's 4 or 5 that interviewed for the same job that I got. Mm-hmm. So I had to think differently. And one of the best gifts of being a working mom, if you look at it as a gift, is maternity leave. To have the confidence to leave your post for 3 months, like at any given time, like, oh my gosh, there's all these plates, I'm spinning right now. And about 4 of them, I'm like, oh, those are kind of bad, but I'm going to ignore those. You can't do it all. So as a leader, the offices and the states that aren't doing as well, or, kind of you're letting some people like the leash out for a little bit. So when I got pregnant after being a vice president for about a year, I have about 3 months before I tell my peers and everybody that I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so I had to get creative and almost create like a mini succession plan for myself. So I think the first thing I did is recognize I don't need to be in the room for my region to be great. And I don't need to have I don't need to be the epicenter of the Southeast region was kind of my mantra. So instead of 30-minute calls with everybody every single week, I did market-based calls. I kind of grouped the region into 3 different markets. So then I'd have like 5 on one call, 4 on another. And then I would choose one of them as a leader to figure out who would lead the region when I was out for 3 months. It was a $350 million region. I think at that time, our CAGR was like 20%. We had like a 15% growth goal.
Wow.
And so we were the hard charging typical sales, back in that time, like smile and dial, smile and dial. And if you weren't pumping everybody up and making sure they were doing it, numbers weren't met. But if I'm not going to be there for 3 months, I'm like, I got to figure out how to, ignite the region in a way that it could lead without me in the room. And so that was the one thing that I think I did well. And so when I was on maternity leave, not planning on coming, not really sure what I want to do, it was my boss, Keith Bozeman, and also my husband. They're like, you're not really going to leave. You're not really going to like hang it up right now. And I was kind of like laughing. I'm like, I have totally underestimated how much I love my job. So decided to come back because there was just too much that I enjoyed about it. And that was that was kind of the gift. So I think the real thing is, as important as we are, when you leave a company, it's amazing. It still actually exists without you. So I just had to learn that early. We're not that important. Yeah. So knowing that you just have to do your best and show up each person at a time. And then I got pretty creative at that stage.
It's really cool how like we grow as people through different chapters of our lives, and then, get uncomfortable and figure out different systems that work. And there's a lot of trust that you got to put into others to be able to know that they're going to show up. And I think curating the right, being able to, like you said, give people the opportunity to really step up is a really cool thing. Because that's a really great way for them to take agency and ownership and really run with it. So you were actually kind of like building your direct reports before you were hiring them into the roles in some aspect. Like,
well, selfishly, I mean, I literally was doing it selfishly because I'm like, I can't do this job. I can't do the job like my other 6 peers. So I've got to figure out something different, because it actually was very hard to leave the office. I was in Washington or Baltimore area at the time. So if you didn't leave by 4:30, there was no way I'd be home by 5:30 for the nanny switchover. Mm-hmm. And I wanted some transition time and all that stuff. So I had to leave early. And it's funny. I used to I would sneak out, and then I tell my secretary when she leaves, and it was like 6:30 whenever she left, I'm like, you need to turn out my light. And then when she came in earlier before me, have her turn on my light. And Michael Salandra, who's one of my favorite leaders, CEO, his office like right down the hall from mine, and he saw Erica do this, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she starts giggling. She's like, "Well, Marcy's got to go home to get her kids, so she just keeps the lights on to make sure people think she's here, or maybe she's in a meeting." He called me and lit me up. He was so mad, and he's like, "If we are ever going to get women successful in this organization, I want you slamming the door at 4:30. I want you to be proud you're hitting your numbers and going home. Like, these people need a life." But it was so funny because you just do what you think you need to do. And I still had, as much as I said, I had this swagger of, I could do it my way because I'm the only female. Like, I still felt guilty leaving. And I still had jealousy, like I had certain projects I couldn't do. And then I'd be like, oh, well, if I could stay late, I would be able to take on that project. You have some of that stuff, but it is interesting when you have that moment to reflect on how you did things.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you said Michael, right? Like, mm-hmm. The response from Michael in support of you and women, and like, hey, be loud, be bold, be proud kind of thing. Just that brings a lot of joy to me, just hearing that. It's like, hell yeah. I love that. And so you spent, 20 years roughly in that organization or so. And then now, and then tell us a little bit about, like, so what's the transition like from, obviously you've got an amazing home life, you've got a budding career and business and you're crushing it over there. Like, how did you pivot into building, your own thing? And what were some of the gaps that you saw in what you were doing that made you even think, hey, I'm going to go try something new? Because it sounds like you were, crushing it, right? So like, tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, well, I will say the first couple of years of being an entrepreneur is very messy. And I was very, I ran the company strategy when it was about 3 billion. So I was really good with, like, if our executive team is saying we're going to do something, we don't deviate for 18 months. Like, I was so structured. And then when you start your own entrepreneur business, you pivot a lot. So one thing I would like, just kind of going back, one of the reasons why I did leave, after 14 years of being a working mom. My daughter was 14. I do have 2 sons too. I keep talking about my daughter. But my daughter was out 14, and I was sitting at one of those big conferences. One of the presidents is up on stage, and I found myself rolling my eyes, not at the president, but at the message, like the rah, rah. And by the time my eyes went from the left all the way to the right, I was like, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to quit. Like, I just knew it, because I was so in love with the company and everything we're doing. And I always said, the second I lose my passion for the place, I'm out. So I came home, and it wasn't but 2 weeks later, I ended up leaving. And the interesting thing is, I had so much stress at work, like everybody does, right? But I didn't realize till I stayed home, you bring yourself with you. So while I had all these excuses because I was a working mom, those excuses were gone as a stay-home mom. And I still had stress. I still had busy. I still had all these things. And I found it fascinating that I thought it was like this, I retired, or I stayed home with the kids, and now I'm at the beach. I live in Florida. So I'm like, now I'm at the beach. Like, what stress could I have? I was always so envious of stay-home moms. And then I became one. I was like, wait a minute, it's not as gravy as I thought. So I ended up doing, like, I really just jumped into my meditation practice, and I went to like a 5-day silent retreat. I just did a lot to kind of study the brain, study, how things work, and a mindfulness technique. And at one time I was at a retreat, and it's like the world just all of a sudden paused and made perfect sense that it was my own limiting thoughts that caused so much stress. And if I didn't bring those limiting thoughts to me, I probably wouldn't have been as disappointed with where I was in my career at the time, frustrated and things like that, or stressed, or disappointed at home, the tug and war at home, where I always laugh with, like, my working moms of young children. I'm like, you both do about 140% at home. So don't get mad about your extra 40% you're doing, because he's also doing, double the work. Like, it's only supposed to add up to 50-50. But so what I ended up doing is my realization of my own limiting thoughts. And if I could break the spell, when we first started Revel about 2018, so however many years ago that was, we started Revel, and our avatar was wanting to build the company that I wish I had when I was navigating really large corporate responsibilities, navigating maternity leaves, and just did not want to lose sense of myself. So we want to work with that time-starved working mom whose vision of success include career, include family, and include wellness. And we started with that. And what was so fun starting it is that all day long, for me to be great at my job, I had to perfect being a role model for myself. And what drove me with this Revel business is, I just think there's nothing better than having your children see you swing for the fences in terms of, like, starting again. So I was like, at any moment, at any time, you are always equipped to start anything new that you are excited about. And I just wanted to, like, teach my kids that. And so that was kind of a lot of my motivation. And then as I got started, a couple of the clients I have, retainers, that they were like I always laugh, they're my invoice number one. I still have the same connections from back in the back in the days of my corporate, and like you talk about John Kaplan, like still really good friends with him. He's still my mentor. He's always like my first phone call. Like if I have some sort of struggle or question. But starting Revel ended up being really joyful because I could, again, just commit to working with clients who I really like them, connect with people. I do a lot of stuff for my friends and family, and some of my friends or family are business acquaintance, but I do things to help their company. Like, it's just been really rewarding. So with Revel, we always say the 3 problems we solve are anything tied to revenue, because I'm a salesperson at heart, anything tied to people, culture, leadership, succession planning, and then anything tied to mitigating burnout.
Yeah. It's, I'm in the early days of building Feather right now, as you know. So the pivoting and the demanding schedules and the flexibility and all of that, it really, what you're saying really resonates with me. I'd love to maybe just go a little bit deeper into, how you got Revel off the ground, right? Like what was like the early days like? The good, the bad, the ugly, how did you know what you were doing was addressing something different? Did you know? And yeah, tell us a little bit more about what that part of your story was about.
Oh. It's interesting because as I hear you talk, I have like 17 different thoughts going through my head at the same time, because there's one element. I was lucky. I started Revel with my sister, and then we just had more fun than not. And so it was easy, and we weren't stressed about getting paid, it was our time and stuff like that. So we were a little bit lucky in the sense that we started consulting, like a consulting practice first. It wasn't until we started the search business that we actually have, business partners and contracts and technology investments and all that stuff, because that was a little bit more in the starting a real. But for me, the early days, how we got started, and I think, Jeremy, you'll love this, is my sister and I, we're at a family reunion. We're going back and forth, like, well, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. And then we're like, well, let's call so-and-so, see how we do it. And we call, like, oh, okay, that's how we do it. And then like, maybe we could do this. And then like, let's call so-and-so and see how we could do that. So we decided, and this is again, 2018, before Zoom was popular and before, podcasts were a thing. But what we decided to do is we decided to kind of put ourselves through our own entrepreneurial MBA program. We were having live conversations. We called it Tuesday at 2. Because my sister and I are different time zones and we could not figure out a time that worked for both of us. So we're like, we just need one time once a week. And we'd have a live conversation and we'd open up to our friends and family, entrepreneurs, connections. And we usually had about 10, 15 people join, but we'd have a guest speaker. And the guest speaker was an entrepreneur. And Alice and I were just like, well, how do you build a website? I mean, seriously, like, do we have to pay somebody? Can we do it on our own? And we would just ask basic questions like that. Or we asked about like trademarks and things that you don't always think of. And you're like, so many people, you hear a podcast and like, trademark early, get you registered. And, we were new enough, but we're like, do we have to spend that much money? And then we'd get a lawyer, to be our guest speaker. And so through our relationships is how we really started Revel, by just asking for advice and then opening it up to our friends and family so they could learn at the same time. But that also ended up being a referral source for paying clients.
Yeah, that's it's awesome because you're just creating an ecosystem of value in that sense, right? While you're learning, you're helping other people get value as well. What was the intersection back then of, tools, time, like how are you actually managing relationships? Did you, was it napkin math type stuff, or like how did you get it off the ground?
A lot of Google Docs.
A lot of Google Docs. Yeah, I love Google Docs. Lots and lots of.
Well, I will say our turning point to become like a hobby business where we kind of got paid, but I was working. I mean, there were moments of wanting to give it up. Like I was working longer and harder starting Revel than I was at the cushy job at corporate America where I was probably getting overpaid. And so in that lens, I, would get kind of frustrated. And, my kids are like, is this working, Mom? Like, how much money are you making? They'd ask me. I'm like, none of your business. I didn't want to say I'm like working minimum wage, basically. But it wasn't until I had a moment that an old intern of ours, it was right after 2020, and she had a job. She graduated from college. She was our intern, and then she graduated from college and her job fell through. And I get this email out of the blue, like, hey, we took your advice, time to bet on myself. And Lucy's email comes, she's like, would you hire me to do marketing? And I kind of rolled my eyes, because I was like, well, I ran text marketing. Like, I kind of know how to do marketing. And now the DIY, Canva makes it so easy. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to, we're not making enough money to spend money. But then, then I had my wake up call and I'm like, wait, the whole, like our meditation thing we do as a company, you'd say like, I'm the type of person who, and my response is always like, who makes it possible for women to live their best life was kind of like my thing. And so I get this email from Lucy, who's still with us. And I was like, oh, I want to pay somebody else and stuff I could do. And I'm like, wait, I'm the type of woman that can do this. So I say yes. And from that point forward, she started taking over the branding and we literally switched and we went to more, like I was able to do more corporate programs, succession planning, got somewhat bigger clients where I spent all my time. So once I started outsourcing with people I trust, our business grew. So our big turning point was recognizing that we don't have to do the stuff that I call red energy. All the things I love doing. Like I love doing this. I love having a conversation with Jeremy. Like this to me is so fun. I don't love like, is that crooked? Does this, like all those little things like that to me is just red energy. So if I wake up every day, like I have, I've got the VAs, I have so many different people that are helping me, but I wake up, I look at my calendar, I'm like, okay, how can I have the best day and serve these people? And I don't worry about the back office because I'm paying competent people that have experts in those business. So that's kind of been our big turning point is trust, build a team around you sooner than you think you need, have confidence to stay in your lane and outsource, the parts that you can.
Yeah, that's really cool. And obviously like you started to hit a bit of a stride where Revel started to expand in terms of the different areas of value, right? Now you have search, there's network, right? Like you're continuing to build the company kind of portfolio, so to speak. Can you give us like an overview, right? What are the kind of core pillars in today's state for Revel?
Well, we still stay focused on the same three problems. Again, your mentor is my mentor with John Kaplan. So you got to focus on the problems you solve, but we still stay really clear on those three problems. As I was working with, most of my clients are in the C-suite somewhere. And most of the times when I'm working with them, it has something to do with performance management, something to do with their hiring strategy and things like that. And so we'd be in boardrooms and we're facilitating a session and they're like, well, we need to hire this, we need to hire that. And then a couple of my clients, they turn and laugh like, Marcy, aren't you a recruiter? Like, didn't you do that for 22 years? So the starting search actually came from demand from my clients. So I feel like by staying consistent in the things that I'm good at and the things I love doing, I absolutely love helping companies. And by connecting people, not just recruiting like old school, like, look for people and shove some resumes, but genuinely like, who is the person that's going to take this company to the next level? So when we started search, we decided like, let's do it differently in the sense that it is, executive search, and that's normal, like we find the right person, we let our clients interview, but we actually couple our placements with what we call Revel 90, like an onboarding where I'll use my executive coaching and we give them tools to be successful, that, whether it's the placement or the company, because all of our clients are different, but we help that person in their first 90 days, experience some wins. We help them like get settled. So then that way they're on a trajectory to make a difference, the whole reason why they were hired. So we started all kind of, it's just flown kind of naturally. And I feel fortunate that I don't feel like I was under like the, a private equity deadline or something kind of like that. So all of our investments have kind of come, from within. And it's really, and the word revel, means to have fun and lively, like to revel in the moment. And that is kind of our anchoring point. So every time we do something, even though search was like our bigger one, like we have now a team and that's larger. And that's definitely a really awesome traditional company, but we don't let the work we do rob us of the joy we're supposed to be having while doing it. So we're really selective with the clients we work with and making sure we love the work. And then from that point of view, we can still revel in it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really amazing when you get kind of that momentum and there's the intersection of doing things that, that in Japan they talk about ikigai, right? Like basically let's get right in the center of what I love, what I'm good at, what the world needs, right? Where I can get paid. And it's really a pretty amazing thing to be able to find
Mhm.
a path into that. Um, I would also imagine, at least, again, in Feather, we're early, so haven't had this problem just yet. I guess we're still trying to build it brick by brick. But, in my career, in sales, I would find myself leaning into the relationships that are in front of me because I'm transacting with them or I'm running a campaign, I'm PG, I'm trying to build my pipeline up. I've got some pressure, I've got things that are happening. And I think it's natural, right? Because as professionals, we're time starved. And it was really easy for me to kind of lose touch of like all the other stuff that's happening or all the other people that are important because you just are in the zone and focused. And I guess what I was curious to know is as you saw the business picking up and as you're obviously juggling like commitments for being a mom and being able to have a life and having fun and loving what you do, like that's a lot to juggle. Do you ever find that the success kind of worked against some of the connection? Was there anything that came to you then?
Definitely. I mean, it's the number one reason why I'm the biggest raving fan of Feather, because I feel like I need it. So, when I think about what you're building, it's like you spoke to me I'd say within 45 seconds of you sharing what you're building. I was like, oh, I need that. And I think what's hard is that, the people that the technology, we have our branding for Revels on LinkedIn. So then I have a little bit more connection with my LinkedIn friends, but then I'll go to like the lacrosse sidelines and everyone's like talking about something that somebody did. I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't even go on Instagram, because I don't live. So I find myself like a little bit out of the loop when I'm too work centric. And then I find myself loving what I do. So I think of like, oh, I should connect with that person. I can get a little one-dimensional. And that's actually the biggest stress I had when I was working. I'd say, well, if I wasn't working mom, I'd be more in the loop on the sidelines. But the truth of the matter is I'm in the strength finders world. I love achieving. I'm a high achiever is my number one strength. And with that in mind, I set goals there and I do that. So as it relates to relationships, you don't set goals for, you don't have like authentic, a goal to have an authentic relationship with somebody. That has to come natural. So I do find myself, often reminding myself I need to have a break. I need to like intentionally do some fun things. And with other friends, I make sure I have a good balance of volunteering, not just on a board, but volunteering on things. But it's not easy. I mean, we're inundated. The thing that I found, I think there's a study out there, but we are so connected with so many people, so like exponentially more people we're connected with from 20 years ago, but we're lonelier as a society. And that's because of that authentic relationship that it's important that you stay in touch and that you're there with them. So I would like Feather to come to life and I'll be your number one salesperson for it because I know, I know the work you're doing and I definitely know there's such a need.
Yeah, that's super. And I think it's really important now today too, because we're just inundated with so much information. The
Mm.
optionality throughout our days is just it's heavy. There's so much you can do. There's so much coming at us. And I actually think that there's a real opportunity to level up our intentionality and stay top of mind and build meaningful connection in between those transactions in a way where there's like, when you do invest a lot of time into your career, there's a lot of friendships and joyful moments that evolve from that, right? Like my co-founder and I sold him a bunch of App Dynamics 10 years ago, right? And then we became close. Like one of my buddies, he's a senior CTO at a Fortune 50 company. He was a customer of mine. I went with Christina, my wife, and to his 50th birthday party in Jamaica, right? Like, and we weren't doing deals later, but that I think putting in effort and just being intentional really it creates these moments of opportunity. And as we get older, we have less time because we have different responsibilities. We shed relationships. And I think it's important that we stay in front of it. And so when you're looking at like leveling up, and coaching people, executives that are frantic and trying to they're either coming up in their career different, I imagine it's different chapters. How do you think about helping them develop systems to stay human and also be effective? Because there's sometimes those are opposing forces, right?
Right. Well, it's the thing for me is everybody's so unique. So while I have a methodology I use, and I know some of our methodologies from being some of our calls, it's so personal on what they need at the moment that they need it. And so one thing I love doing is like teaching them how to steal time, like energy management. When you think about like time, it's finite, but energy is renewable. And if they can just understand the brain, there are certain things you can do to be present and think differently about a problem because you had that pause moment. So often people under stress, they're so busy, they can't think about how to delegate, or they're so busy, they just say yes, they just keep doing, instead of like pausing and recognizing, can I not go to that meeting? Or how can I do this meeting differently? Or how, you're just kind of running through the motion. So like some little techniques are so simple to apply. And the executives that I admire, like most of my clients, I'm like so honored to talk to them for the hour. They're so like badass, awesome leaders, really good. And then we have this 1 hour together where it's like a safe space for them to explore solutions. And so while I'm great with like being in the boardroom with them, like exploring solutions, they come up with brilliant ideas, but they always credit me. I'm like, I'm just the person asking the question, but I allow them to slow down. And so like the systems and processes for most like high achievers, they have to recognize that the way the brain works, if you're in your fight or flight, like stress mode, like the highest brain wave, it's like this, and it's not sustainable, just like it's not sustainable for a professional athlete to be training 24/7. They need intentional break days. So you have to have those breaks throughout the day. You don't need to like work so hard for that vacation. You need to have today, like a break day. And so starting a meeting 5 minutes late on purpose gives everybody 5 minutes to do their to-do list, take a breath. You're not racing to a meeting, doing things like with your team. We're like, hey, let's, instead of starting this meeting, like we've been talking about all the problems, we do have a big problem we need to solve. Why don't we all go around and talk about let's zoom out, why we're grateful for the company we lead. And they go around the room and things like that. Like that's really where like the difference comes in. And so like, I don't know, those are some of the things that I teach, but I will say last week I had a chance on our podcast, we had interviewed John Kaplan, and he is a former 20-year Navy SEAL. And so, of course, I'm so excited to talk to him. And the simplicity of what he said, so he's he does coaching, but he's so intentional that his family comes first. So he won't travel, even that he'll get paid really well. Like he's got so many guardrails. He's like, my why is this family, and I want to be here for them. But when I asked him, like, all right, what's one thing you teach executives? Like, there's one thing you teach them. What's kind of a tip or trick that helps them be more mentally tough is his platform. And do you know what he said, Jeremy? Sleep.
Sleep. Oh my God. What is sleep?
That's all he said. He's like, you can't do anything without good sleep. And I was so blown away from it because the simplicity of that. But you have somebody that, and Navy SEALs aren't known to have good sleep habits. So he actually went to a sleep training course to get back into the civilian life to be a good sleeper. But that's his number one thing. Amazing.
I love that so much. Having 2 young kids and having a team that when our first chapter at Feather was an international engineering team. It was no sleep. And I'm just trying really hard to get back to like some kind of semblance of normal when it comes to that, because I do find, man, like how legendary are your days when you can start it off feeling fully rejuvenated. It's funny that you said like just taking a second to like step away from what you're doing. We just moved into a new office because I have two guys that are coming in that are engineers that are awesome. And so like there's a new lease on life at Feather building the product together. And we needed to have a second space, and I still needed to have a space to be able to record conversations like this. But I put a little table here, and I find that like when I get away from my desk, even though it's there, and I just sit by the window, it changes the way that I feel about things, which is really, really kind of nice. And so I love that. I want to kind of like wrap up with one thing that I like to get as like a key takeaway, and you dropped a lot of golden nuggets here. But when you talk to busy executives or, busy people in general, and you're like, maybe one thing that you think makes it are so many, it's like I don't know if you play golf. I'm a terrible golfer. But like, if you go and try and over engineer your golf swing, you're never going to be able to get good at swinging it. And it's because there's so many mechanics. And so what I find is that when you read books or, there's just so much good information out there, like, how do you actually put the thing into practice?
Yeah.
I'm hearing you about to say one foot in front of the other, which maybe but like if you were gonna give the people that are listening some coaching around like actually just making one small incremental approach, like how do you do that when there's so many things that you could do to get better?
Yeah, okay, I'm going to go with the mom thing real quick, but I felt like the hardest thing of having my first baby was all the conflicting advice. Like, let your baby cry it out, bring your baby into bed, feed them this. There's so many different conflicting advice. And I was like, I'm such a student that I was going to be the best mom ever. And I was reading so many books, like what to expect when I was expecting. And then she had colic. And I'm like, somebody tell me the answer. Like there's no manual for life. And so I just share that story because it's the same thing. Like, I love James Clear with Atomic Habits. Like I love so many people's, point of view of how to do this. And the only thing that I can recommend, which makes sense, no matter who you're reading, Brene Brown, like you name the famous person. The first thing is you got to know who you want to be. And it's not somebody else's vision statement. It's not, because what happens is like you write a vision statement and this is who I want to be as an entrepreneur. But what creeps in is Brene Brown's voice. What creeps in is these other voices. So then it's kind of yours, but it's also like aspirational to somebody else. And what happens between you write the vision statement, if you don't do it well, the only reason why a good vision statement doesn't work is doubt creeps in too fast. Like, oh, I don't have enough money saved to do that. I don't have enough, I'm not experienced to do that. When I have more clients. So the practice that I say is you gotta, as often as possible. I still do it daily. I've been doing it daily for, now like 12 years, but like every day before my feet touch the ground, in bed, I'll just kind of say like, it's either an I am statement or it's a vision statement, but like, I'm the type of person who, and then I'll say like who I want to be more often. And sometimes it's the mom, sometimes it's the coach, sometimes it's the volunteer. And then all you have to do is feel that person, not because you're there, but it's because who you're becoming. It's where you're going. It's your future self. And then you have to recognize the future self doesn't have to be after all these things. You got to create that feeling of wealth, that feeling of whatever. So if your statement is like, let's just say you're borderline broke, okay? And your vision includes a wealthy parent that can afford college for their kids and something that feels so far away from you, the feeling of that is what matters. So then all you need to do is just take one action today. When I'm this person, here's one moment in time I can be that person. So you're like, what would this person do on a daily basis? How would this person sound? How would they dress? And if you think about it, you're like, wait, I'm doing this thing at 4. Why don't I dress the part? Why don't I prepare for the part? Why don't I express gratitude for being included? Like whatever it looks like. So it's like a 30-second exercise. I gave you a 45-minute version of it, but I want to give some background. But the thought is you just want to kind of on a daily basis be like, who do I want to be more often? I want to be the type of mom that does this. I want to be the type of executive that does that. And then you just say, well, where's a moment in my day-to-day that I can be that best version of myself? And the more habits you have of that, you just start creating an expectation around you of people knowing you're that person. Like, oh yeah, she's going somewhere. Oh yeah, she's an engaged mom, whatever that looks like. And that's the thing. And so all the books are awesome. Like I always have like 4 or 5 books reading at the same time. They all come down to be who you are and be the best version of that person as often as possible. And when you fall off the bike, don't dwell in the mud. Don't stay down there too long with negative self-talk. Like, what'd you learn from this? Okay. Like you fell off the bike, like brush it off and
keep going.
Keep going. Yeah. There's lots of ways to go. So that's kind of my
That's incredible. Marcy, this just underlines why I have so much admiration for you, and you're just such an awesome human. This has been incredible. And I'm going to listen to this like 6 times because I feel like you just dropped a master's course in so many different areas and how, intentional relationships tie into being a better version of ourselves and putting our families and the things that are important to us into everything that we do. It's just really, you're awesome. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, Jeremy, you live up to who you want to be more often, because I know what Feather's all about and the vision there. And then you and I get on the phone and you will ask me something that's so like inside my world of something that's important to me. I'm like, you did it again. Like you're so good about just being heart-centered and genuine. So I just appreciate knowing you and the work you do and just being in your community.
Yeah, thank you. The feeling is very mutual. So Marcy, tell anyone out there that's interested in learning more about Revel, getting to know you, like how can they learn some more?
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, I am on LinkedIn just with my name, Marcy Stoudt. And then because we have the 2 brands, Revel Coach and Revel Search, they have separate websites, both revelcoach.com or Revel Search. But LinkedIn's probably the simplest place. And I would love to meet anybody in your community.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. So yeah, this has been great. I think technology, people, human authenticity, I mean, it all rolls up who we are, how we show up. It all rolls up into what I'm really passionate about is the evolution of EQ into RQ, into relationship intelligence. And if anyone out there is listening, we of course would love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you from today? And feel free to leave a comment. And of course, if you want to check out Feather, what we're doing and bringing technology and human authenticity together, feel free, check us out at www.feather.vip. This has been Birds of a Feather. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Marcy, thanks again for being with us.